Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm Lucy Hodes, Senior Vice President of Media and Communications for CCA, and I'll be your moderator. I hope everyone is doing well. Today's webinar is benefiting from breakthroughs in mission-critical push-to-talk communications, and it's sponsored by Clear Sky Technologies. We have two speakers. I'll first introduce Carlos Fernandez, who is Vice President of Sales at Tasta. Carlos has over 20 years of experience working in telecommunications, including systems integration companies and Tetra radio manufacturers. In his current role, he's responsible for promoting Tasta mission critical PTT products that provide high added value in market segments such as public safety, utilities, oil and gas, transportation, health, and mining. Next is Dean Frisanke, who is Vice President of Channel Development for Communication Technology Services LLC, or CTS. Dean was the founder of Clear Sky Technologies, which was acquired by CTS in 2020. Dean's current role is bringing partners together to create compelling 4G and 5G private networks for the enterprise market. For those of you in the audience, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please submit them at any time and we will get to them at the very end. Also, today's webinar is being recorded and it will be available on CCA's website after it's over. So now, Dean, I will turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks a lot, Lucy. We're happy to be here and looking forward to talking about mission critical push to talk. A little bit about background here on the combination of CTS and Clear Sky. So Clear Sky has been around for 20 odd years, serving the many needs of the wireless operator community. And last year in 2020, we combined forces with CTS. And CTS is a much larger company, provided us nationwide reach with their almost 500 people and 15 offices around the country, and it's really been a match of two perfectly blended companies. So Clear Sky continues, the Clear Sky division of CTS continues to offer services to the rural wireless operator community, and with a focus now to add upon that and do additional things based on our greater capabilities with the combined company. So a little bit more on the CTS side. CTS has been around for 30 years, so they beat out Clear Sky on that. And in those 30 years, they've done about 19,000 projects, 9,000 of which have been DAS or cellular-oriented projects. CTS is arguably the largest in-building cellular integrator in the country, with a very large design team out of the Phoenix office, providing all kinds of Ivy Wave and RAN plan designs for in-building, also with construction and construction management. CTS does really large projects like airports. CTS did the last 4 of 5 Super Bowls, installing cellular systems for the wireless operators in those venues. And so the company, combined with Clear Sky's managed services, has been a really great blending of talents. Some of the projects that CTS has done is really kind of the who's of large venues, major convention centers, airports, giant hotels, stadiums, but also much smaller venues as well, warehouses, office buildings, pretty much anywhere anybody needs cellular coverage, which is, as we know on this call, pretty much everywhere. So CTS has the full kind of span of capabilities across all these different types of deployments. What brought CTS/Clear Sky together with Tasta is our new focus on private LTE. So we're seeing a lot of enterprise customers interested in having their own 4G or 5G networks inside their venue. Sometimes it's, and oftentimes it's complementary to their Wi-Fi systems. Sports venues, for instance, have massive amounts of Wi-Fi usage, but they can't really control it because it's all open spectrum, open frequency. So with a private cellular system running on CBRS frequencies, cash registers, point of sale devices, and our topic of today, personnel communications through push to talk, can be much more efficient and much more reliable than using Wi-Fi. So Clear Sky's hosting capabilities are a long history in running LTE for our rural operator partners put us in a position to bring private wireless and private LTE and private 5G now to the enterprise community. And as part of that package, we can design, we can install, we can operate the core network, and then we monitor, and if heaven forbid something goes wrong, we can repair through a dispatch system across the country. And we provide a lot of different financing options now and a variety of enhanced services. One of the enhanced service that we're most excited about is the ability to bring push-to-talk onto these private networks. And since our history with ClearSky has been very deep and broad with the wireless operator community, we realized when TASTA came on board to help us with these private cellular systems that the same push-to-talk capability could have tremendous impact and be a great add-on addition for the rural operator community to add as part of the product mix. So what I want to do is turn this over now to Carlos to talk about how this TASTA system could be used as part of a public cellular network with nationwide reach and create a new service offering that could be of interest to some of our listeners today. So Carlos, let me hand over to you.
Hi, thank you, Dean. Happy to be with you today and also with the audience. And yeah, I'll try to briefly explain, what is TASTA, what basically is our solution, and as you said, how can you basically blend the mission critical push to talk with LTE, whether this is private or a nationwide reach and carrier grade LTE networks. So first of all, TASTA is a mission critical communications provider. I mean, we've been doing this since 2012, basically when the first, push to talk over cellular, solutions came into the market. Our headquarters are in Germany. We have a worldwide presence. I'm myself based in the US, and we also have offices in South Africa, Brazil, Spain, Russia, and now Singapore as well. So push to talk solutions, early acceptors of push to talk solutions were corporate companies, small companies that couldn't afford radio systems. But this perception has changed during the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years. And we are getting more and more requests from professional grade users trying to migrate their LMR network into mission critical push to talk over broadband. This is due to 2 things. One is the increased reliability of the LTE networks, whether this is private or public LTE networks, and also that there is a standard that is run by the same body that define LTE. It's 3GPP, and it's called MCX. MCX, I'll explain a bit later, but standardizes the way of doing mission critical push to talk. Our presence in the US, of course, ClearSky CTS is a prime partner, and we are, as Dean said, trying to introduce mission critical push to talk in their private LTE deployments, but we are also together trying to bring mission critical push to talk, for nationwide services on public LTE networks. So in the next slide, we are going to see, how or what a 3GPP is. So So 3GPP basically is standardized as part of their body or services, thank you. So standardized, the way of doing communications. It's needed, of course, if you want to serve professional users, that every vendor is bringing a private solution that, can perform or not perform. So basically what they are defining is the pillars and the basics of what those mission critical over broadband push to talk solutions need to carry. They even define ways to do quality of service, in connecting directly to IMS and the LTE network cores. But other than that, also define the services and how those services need to be executed. So there are 3 main parts in this standard. One is for the push to talk, so MCPTT. Then, of course, they also define mission critical data, basically text messaging and GPS and everything that is pure data. And there is also a part for video, which is mission critical video. And that's the term MCX, which basically defines the 3 of them. So in the next slide, we're going to have basically an overview of what's TASTA solution. Okay, so a mission critical push to talk, I mean, cannot only be push to talk. I mean, what I mean is if you are targeting professional audiences, I mean, you really need to provide them more because they are used to have radios that can do basically more. So of course, Tasta solution has easy to use PTT functions. Basically, we're going to see later. We're going to have everything related to voice included in the application. I mean, the application as well, includes a live mapping solution. We're going to be how we included also indoor location for those users that have a need for indoor location as well. There is a module for video. I mean, one of the advantages of basically replacing an LMR-based communication system for a broadband-based communication system is the ability to send more data. And that's where video comes to play. So I mean, there are different flavors of video, but an example could be a streaming video for a remote or unmanned vehicle, such a drone, where dispatch can basically get that video real time and stream it to the users live. So these kind of applications are possible, in an LTE network. We've also equipped our application with lone worker and man down. So for those of the audience that basically are familiar with radio systems, that's what it is. For the others, that's basically the idea of a police officer or a worker has an accident. It falls to the ground. Then the device detects that there's been a change in incline. So basically, the device sets up an automatic emergency call, and it triggers video and it triggers GPS position. That all happens automatically. And that's basically very important for professional users. And of course, we added, encrypted communications. I mean, there has always been some kind of chat, people saying, look, but I'm using my own device. I'm connected to a Wi-Fi network at some point. So, I mean, am I going to be listened to? So, I mean, no, of course, we're going to see how every communication from device to the server is fully encrypted in a professional grade. So going into a bit of more detail in the next slides, we're going to see the functionalities. So in this first one, this is the voice functionality. Of course, it's a push to talk application. So we offer group calls. So one-to-many calls where the single user pushes PTT and speaks to everybody that is in their group. I mean, of course, we have individual calls as well. So user press PTT, it's a direct call to a private party. So two people speaking together. In that individual call, we've developed a feature that is a differentiator from LMR, or I would say from most LMR technologies, which is the full duplex call. So with the Tasta application, you can do a push to talk call to another party, but you can also set up a full duplex call, which, I mean, it's important at some point. I mean, you can have users that are working, they need both hands, and they still need to communicate. So that's why full duplex call are important for some of the professional users. The system packs all the priority schemes that are needed. Certain users are going to have more priority. They're going to be able to do preemptive calls. So, for example, a dispatcher will be able to override a regular user. So that's as well, a common feature in radio systems. As I said, we can manage status messages. We can send text, and a differentiator from LMR is that we can attach multimedia data. So you can send maps, photos, videos to your users in the field. We're going to talk later a bit about emergency call. So I'll discuss about that with lone worker protection. But of course, I mean, we have all the emergency suite embedded into the application. We can offer end-to-end encryption, a military-grade AES 256 as well, and the dispatcher has the ability to do dynamic grouping. So what does that mean? So in an event of a disaster, so a dispatch may need to put together 3 users that they typically work in different groups. So I mean, in a very simple manner, that dispatcher can create a group, put those 3 users into that group. The users can basically handle the incident together. So once this incident is finished, the group is deleted, and then the users are sent back to their regular operations group. So that's also a really advanced feature that we offer to professional users. That's basically about voice. So the next slide is going to show us video. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why our customers come to us and say, look, I mean, I want to do more. I need video. I know video sometimes saves lives. So we offer them 3 flavors. So we can do push to video, meaning you can select a number of parties and then you can press PTT. So instead of voice only, so we send video as well. So every user that is pushing their PTT, I mean, is sending what the front or the rear camera of the device, I mean, is basically viewing. So that way you can easily share, you know, what's going on an incident or ask for help on how to repair something because you are adding video to your live communication. We have, of course, private full duplex calls, like type of conference calls as well. And as I said before, we can now remotely stream video from a device. I mean, if a certain device has the right permissions, because of course that comes with privacy as well. So a dispatcher can basically open the camera of a remote device and start streaming video. That is typically enabled only on emergency basis, unless that device is specifically installed for that purpose. So again, so of course, every time that there is an emergency, whether the user requests it or not, so the system is going to record the video. So, I mean, basically you can really understand what's going on. So that video in these three flavors, it's adding our customers basically situation awareness. So everybody wants to add video now, and that we are offering as well. Next slide is on top of the GPS position, which I'm not going to spend too much time discussing regular GPS. Of course, our application, you know, you can have the users on the map. You can basically create geofences and make a user that comes into a certain area that is basically fenced to change group, to send an alarm to dispatcher. So, I mean, GPS is pretty, let's say, common those days. But we had a lot of customers, you know, asking us about, okay, but, you know, I'm a manufacturing plant, you know, all my workers are indoors, you know, so how can I, in the case of an emergency, know, you know, where my workers are? I mean, basically the same requests we had from, and this was in Germany, from 3 big hospitals. So they wanted to basically position their users. I mean, the hospitals have like 6, 7 floors. So they wanted to position the users. So what we did was basically create a module that enables us to integrate indoor location into the GPS suite or the GPS dispatcher. And you can not only see the map on the dispatcher, but you can also see the map on your mobile users. Okay. So basically, when you are inside, of course, there is no GPS. So you have 2 choices here. So you can either locate if the customer has a Wi-Fi network that has enough access points. So you can use the signal strength of the access points to basically locate your users. Or if there is not such network, you can use low power Bluetooth beacons and basically installing, they're really easy to install. They come with a battery for 3 years. So it's just basically, you know, plug and play. So installing enough beacons, you can get accuracies below 3 meters. In terms of mapping, of course, you can upload, you know, 2D maps, but we also have the ability to create a 3D mapping. So and that was one of the cases in one of our hospitals where they wanted a 3D map. So basically that was integrated into the mapping solution. And again, this is not only for the dispatch, but the mobile users can also benefit from a 3D mapping view of the indoor location. So next slide is going to basically present you the lone worker protection. And as I said, you know, we're having even customers that they are not that interested in voice. I hope it's not the case of the audience, but they only want location and emergency. And they basically take the lone worker protection without even, you know, voicing features. Basically what lone worker gives you is again the ability to set up an automatic emergency if something happens, something that is pre-programmed happens on a device on the field. So a couple of examples, as I said before, is the man down alarm. Basically, that is based on a change of inclination for a certain period of time. So somebody gets, you know, an electric shock, goes to the floor. So the device can detect it. Of course, that person cannot basically speak or trigger the emergency button. So the system does the emergency for him. So we have, of course, the no movement alarm. So let's say, for example, you are tracking a truck that is following a route. So you want to know if this truck basically stops for more than 30 minutes, something may have happened. So then you can program the no movement alarm, and again dispatch will basically get an alert. So dispatch can go and check what's going on with that person. What happens when there is an alarm trigger? So as I said before, there is an emergency call that is a high priority emergency going into the system. The dispatcher gets also an alert, on a pop-up alert on the screen. So the user gets positioned in a specific map that is only configured for emergencies. The call, there is a live call, so there is no need for the user to press PTT or anything. So if the user is somehow conscious, so that he may be injured, so there is no need for him to press PTT. And of course, the video is enabled, so automatically dispatch, have awareness of what's going on, on that user. So that all can be pre-programmed, and there are timers, so they can be adapted as well for every user. And there may be users interested in man down, but in no movement alarm. So you can basically configure each user on a different flavor. And that's, this is a feature that most radio networks have. And this has been a feature that has traditionally prevented LMR users to migrate to mission critical push to talk. So we felt we had to come up with it. So the next slide is going to basically take care of security. So of course, this is not an amateur solution. This is a professional solution. So the solution offers security. So the first thing that I like to say is that this solution is encrypted at a transport level. So it's TLS 1.2. So every conversation, every exchange of information between the mobile device and the dispatch is going to be encrypted. So that's about it. On top of that, of course, there are some users that can be sensitive to the information they are exchanging. So there is end-to-end encryption, which is AES 256 military grade, and that can be added to individual users that may want an extra layer of encryption. On access to the system, so how do a user access to the system, to a TASTA server? So of course, the authentication, there is an authentication process. The authentication process is based on user password. But there's a second factor authentication as well for those users that basically want to add it, and is based on the IMEI number of the device. So basically, we can pair a user password with an IMEI of the device. So if that user password is stolen, somebody else tries to access the TASTA server from a different device, they won't be able to do it. So again, we have built, what we believe this is enough, walls or flavors of security, so everybody can feel that they are protected. So those were the basic features. Basic features or unique features that I wanted to highlight today about the TASTA solution. I'd like to come up, especially with the next slides on, okay, why MCPTT on 4G on LTE? Why is better than LMR? Why is better than using it over a Wi-Fi solution? So because we are asked that question every day. So of course, LTE offers high speed, capacity, security that are far superior than Wi-Fi networks, and it offers bandwidth that is basically impossible to achieve with traditional LMR networks. So that's basically the summary. So if we go a bit more detail, so of course, again, whether you're running an LTE public or private network, you're always going to have superior performance. So when you are trying to do video, for example, you are trying to get low delays in terms of the push to talk, you will be much better suited with an LTE network. Of course, if you have an LTE network, you can also use that one as a backbone for other applications such as IoT or even high definition cameras. We've had a couple of projects where we are able to integrate our application, with security cameras. So the user can basically see the video of those cameras into our application. That's a project-based integration, but we've done it before. And we've also integrated this with kind of an IoT IoT projects. I mean, it comes to my mind, for example, we've integrated our test application with the ESPA panels of the hospitals, where you have those panels in the beds that they carry some alarms when a patient is having a problem. So for example, we've integrated that into test solution, so dispatcher gets an alert. So again, I mean, everything running on the same networks gives you some advantages as well. There is, of course, a wider, I would say, range of devices if you are doing mission critical push to talk over LTE than, for example, compared with LMR. So traditionally, if you have a radio network, with some exceptions, you have to stick to the same manufacturer for the devices. Here again, I mean, it's LTE. So basically, you have commercial devices, you have professional devices, but every device, is compatible with the test application. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but we support Android, we support iOS, and we can also support Windows. So basically, any device that is out in the market, whether it's a professionally designed device or a commercially designed device, it can be used with Tasta. And that gives you the flexibility where, for example, a manager of a company, he doesn't want to have a dedicated device. I mean, he just want to have the application on their iPhone in case something goes really wrong. And I would say that one of the biggest advantages is that there is no limit on coverage here. Basically, if you have an LMR radio network, well, you're limited to basically the budget you have to cover a certain or a specific area. But if you are running in an LTE network, even if it's private and you roam to a public LTE network, or you are running over a public LTE network, so basically you have no limit on the coverage that you can achieve with this type of solutions. And finally, in terms of migration, between LMR radio networks and push to talk, we have a complete suite of gateways that you can use basically to patch groups in the LMR network with groups in the Tasta system. So migration paths are also possible as well. So the next slide gives us a chart on basically the feature comparison. So that's basically a summary of what I was discussing. So Tasta MCPTT solution gives you everything that LMR gives you: individual call, groups calls, text messaging. Okay, here we can add multimedia files as well, real-time GPS positioning. Of course, once you have a broadband network, I mean, LMR radio networks are always limited on how many users they can update per 30 seconds, per 60 seconds. I mean, that's gone when you go to broadband. Of course, you can have upgrades only basically limited by the battery of the device. So that's a big advantage as well. We are encrypted. We can do video calls and video streaming. That's not possible on traditional radio systems. We have the lone worker protection. We can do dynamic groups. We can do call recording. Also, one of the advantages, which, I mean, it may not look big, but our customers love, is that you can play back conversations on the mobile devices. That's not possible on radio networks. So somebody gets an instruction from dispatch, he just goes to history and basically plays it back. So that's I would say even a silly application, but is really popular among our users. And finally, the last thing I wanted to comment today, and I've touched base before, on the devices. So the question that I've been asked quite often is like, okay, but are there professional devices? Do I need to use my iPhone? Is the battery going to go away because I have another app? So, I mean, nowadays, I mean, this market has basically boomed in the last 3 years. So every manufacturer, every device manufacturer, whether it's a small or it's a big manufacturer, they're coming with solutions that are basically professional grade, that are adapted to mission critical push to talk. So now users have a complete choice, on using commercial devices or using devices that are basically built for professional use. This is an example from Samsung, which is a military grade phone. It's IP68, it passes all the MIL tests, that radios are mandatory for them. It has, of course, an enhanced battery life, so that can work you through your full shift, and has haptics, which basically, allow you to work with the gloves on. I mean, there are many other devices. Of course, there are intrinsically safe devices as well, or you can even zone 1, class 1. So they're very suitable for oil and gas applications, for food processing plants where you have dust in the air. So you have intrinsically safe devices. You have devices that are mobile type of devices, so you can install on a vehicle. And you also have devices that they look like a radio. Sometimes users don't even want a screen. They don't want touch screen. They just want a device that looks like a radio. They have a push to talk, and they have a knob for volume and another knob for changing channel. So you also have those kind of devices. So now, again, the choice is really, really there. So there is no restriction on the type of user or the type of device that you plan to use. So I think that's basically in a nutshell what I wanted to discuss today, Dean. So I think I'm going to send it over to you. And yeah, I'm ready for questions later on.
That sounds good. Well, we're pretty much up to the question time. So if anybody has questions, please, we look forward to answering them for you, either in this session or afterwards. Just kind of closing thoughts here on how TASTA and CTS would work to help you get a network up. We didn't put an architecture slide in this kind of on purpose because that's something we can put together specific for each use case. But in general, it's a server-based system, and the TASTA network is running out of the ClearSky data centers, so it can be provided as a cloud-based service. So it's a low cost of entry and low level of effort to get into the push-to-talk business. If you've got customers that want to try it out or want to get started, if the volume of business demands it, or if you have a particularly critical customer, it's possible to have an on-prem solution as well. So that on-prem solution could be in your local switching center, or it could literally be on the prem of the customer. Let's say it's a big refinery or mining operation, and they want the peace of mind of having it running in their own data center. That is all available. So we can help you with all of those levels of integration. And these systems, as Carlos pointed out, will work on any of the existing LTE handsets that are on the market right now, and a wide family as well. So it will work with devices that are already deployed, or if they want some of these heavier duty military grade devices, then those would be available as well. So with that, we'll wrap up the formal presentation and bring it to close, and I'll introduce Ron Willett into the conversation as well. Ron runs our managed services division for CTS, the original ClearSky, is a familiar name to the rural carrier community, and so I thought I'd bring him into the conversation in case there's any questions that we can answer that's specific to that. So Lucy, back to you, and we'll field any questions that have come up.
Great, thank you. Just a reminder to the audience, we have some time for Q&A, so if you haven't already, please submit your questions. We've had a couple come in, so I will jump right in. Our first question, what would you say are the most demanded features when discussing with critical infrastructure customers such as utilities, oil and gas, etc.?
Okay, so I mean, let me take the question. So first of all, and as Dean said, one of the features that some customers come with is, okay, so I like the hosting idea, but how about an on-prem server? So that's sometimes, a quick question, especially for those customers really worried about cybersecurity, that they want to have all the system inside the corporate network. So that's one of the possibilities that we together offer. And we are ready to deploy an on-prem project as well with, CTS and TASTA. And as far as the features, basically it's all about group calls, private calls, the emergency feature, and then the lone worker protection. So we're getting a lot of customers asking us for lone worker protection, so they can basically automate their emergency response. So I think that's basically the star when it comes to mission critical customers. Just for example, a utility where there is a worker that is going, up in the basket of a truck, fix a power line. So when that worker goes alone to that basket, sometimes, they basically can enable the lone worker protection feature. So they know that if there is an accident and that there is something wrong with that worker, the system is going to basically alert everybody else. So again, lone worker is a big feature when it comes to mission critical networks and critical infrastructure customers.
Great, thank you. Our next question, will the push to talk work on my regional LTE network and my nationwide roaming partner network? In other words, can I offer a nationwide PTT?
So the quick answer to that is yes. And the longer answer is it's because of data roaming, and this is an application, kind of I guess you can consider it as an over-the-top application from your roaming partner. So it's going to run on the data roaming network perfectly, and then on the regional network as well. So it truly does offer the opportunity. So a trucking or transportation company that might be in the regional market is concerned about having these type of advanced push-to-talk features for their teams that are rolling out nationally. It'll work absolutely perfectly without a blink.
Great, thank you. Our next question, how do you choose the right POC application? The market is quite flooded with several solutions, and some of them are almost free of charge.
Yeah, so let me take that personally. So yes, I mean, it's true, with this boom of POC solutions, I mean, there are a lot of semi-professional or amateur or even very small companies that are offering their POC solution. So basically you have to focus on the flexibility they give you. I mean, sometimes the low-cost solutions, they only have the hosting possibility. So you cannot basically have your own server, even if it's for you offering cloud to your customers. No, I mean, it has to be on a cloud server that is on a foreign country, So that's usually a red flag. And again, features. I mean, most of those solutions, they basically stack with voice and basic GPS. And that's fine for certain type of users, but that's not fine for critical infrastructure users. So it's basically the same process as when you select your core network manufacturer, or where, for those users familiar with radio, when you select your radio network or radio technology, you have to basically focus on those that are professional. So I would say that you have to basically follow the same steps here when selecting a mission. I mean, basically select one that is a mission critical push to talk solution, not only a POC solution. So I think that would be the summary.
Great, thank you. Our next question, could you talk a little bit about cloud versus on-premise? How do you understand what is the best deployment strategy for each customer?
Dean, do you want me to take that one as well, or?
Yeah, go ahead, Carlos. Yes.
Sure. So basically, it's for, I mean, of course, cloud service is really attractive for certain customers that they don't have a strong IT department, for example, they don't have a reliable data center, or they have also these geographically dispersed operations. So they basically, again, think of a transportation company, which basically they can have some offices, but they have users everywhere. So they rely on national or regional-wide carriers. So those users, they typically, are okay with a cloud-based solution as long as that cloud is based on the US. There are other users as well that basically they are more focused, like a manufacturing plant or oil and gas, where they can even have a private LTE network. So they want to have everything on premises, and that also relates to the server as well. So for them, it doesn't really make that much of a sense to work on a cloud-based server when they have everything located into one location, for example. So that's typically, let's say, the technical decision point. I mean, there is also a business or a financial decision point, is that there are companies that they can easily accept OPEX type of budgets versus other companies that they prefer CapEx type of budgets. So of course, if you're an OPEX related company, so you're probably going to lean towards an on-cloud server. versus if you are basically a CAPEX type oriented company, you're going to buy it and you're going to get an on-prem project.
Great, thank you. We have just a couple more questions. So the next one, does the platform ever use VoLTE or does it run on data only?
I can take that one. So it's a data layer application. So it's not dependent on VoLTE. So it will, that's part of the beauty of the ability to roam onto the roaming partners, be that another public network, like one of the big operators, or going the other direction from a regional network down to a private network in a facility. It's all on the data layer. So there's no need for VoLTE and IMS integration to make it work.
Great, thank you. And our final question, what kind of customer would want a private LTE network?
Well, I think we kind of covered that one. What we're seeing on the ClearSky side is not too surprising, really. Industrial locations where the man down is an important capability, or communications amongst the work staff has been critical. But really, what is interesting is what would normally be less critical communications amongst warehouse workers has been an interesting one. So just being able to keep the whole staff pointed in the same direction through a push-to-talk application on a device is pretty profound for some of these businesses that couldn't really justify LMR in the past, or tried cell phones, but that's always one-to-one communication, so that never really worked out. Be able to get the entire maintenance crew or the entire floor in a warehouse operation, we're talking million square foot warehouses here in some cases, getting everybody to do something at that moment simultaneously is turning out to be really, really valuable. So push to talk is kind of been around for a long time, but really, in a way, it's coming into its own with all these new features and functions. Now, Carlos, you spent a lot of time thinking about this. What would you say?
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. So, I mean, I cannot really add anything else because, I mean, you basically described perfectly. And it's not the typical customer. You said, like, you think of oil and gas, which is big. But, again, I mean, warehouse manufacturing, I mean, it's now getting bigger and bigger. So also on our side, we're getting a lot of requests, from warehouse manufacturing as well, where, I mean, they are not customers cut for LMR radio networks, but, of course, I mean, they can take an advantage of the private LTE because it's not only voice, but again, they have all the machines that, I mean, more and more they work on automatic and they need reliable communications as well, So yeah, I fully agree with your answer.
Great. Well, that concludes the Q&A portion of our webinar. Dean or Carlos, do you have any final thoughts before we close out?
Just a thank you to those who've sat through this or those who've watched this online. And please contact any of us here on this final slide, and we'll be happy to tell you more or talk about your specific need.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Lucy. And of course, thank you, the audience, for being with us.
Great. Thanks, everyone, for participating. Thank you, ClearSky, for sponsoring. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Thank you very much. Bye.